recording?
Yeah.
Is that something that only the host can do? Like if I wanted to
unless there's multiple hosts.
Okay, so it's not something a participant can grab with some.
No, it's set up so that the host stops and starts the recording, and then I'm moving them over to our YouTube channel fairly quickly. But yes, it's a host, and the recordings are automatically emailed to the host ID.
Okay, I wasn't sure if the participants were able to grab part of it or not.
Not directly on the Zoom call. I assume that they can grab pieces of it once they're publicly posted. But
okay.
All right, and away we go. Introduction and acknowledgments. That's quotidian, so we can skip that. And again, I'm just going to go through these quickly. If anybody has anything that they've noticed in subsequent readings that needs comment, I expect we will go through early sections fast and maybe pause a little on more recent sections. Town overview location. Lots of location. Town history will not have changed. Demographics, I mean, the background stuff is just the background stuff. But if anybody in subsequent readings noticed that anything was awkward or contradicts anything, call it out, slow me down. Governance Board of Selectmen. Budget and finance. I might try to make these tables a little bigger, which I can do. I just make the document bigger. I also would be happy if anybody wants to volunteer to do better formatting of this as we get closer to the end, but I'm not going to sweat it at this moment. Make it a friendlier visual document, perhaps. Civic engagement. Suggested action steps. I don't know if anybody gave any more thought to any of these, since these are sort of starting to get into the purpose of the document. Infrastructure and public works. I think in general, folks were happy with what we had here. Road construction maintenance. Public buildings and facilities. Waste management. Karen, I assume there's nothing else you particularly wanted to add in here. I don't know if you'd given it any more thought since we put this text in.
Oops, I was muted. I haven't really gone back again. I thought it was sort of a done deal.
Well, I mean, it is and it isn't. I mean, nothing's a done deal till it's the final draft. So, it's conceivable to me that people would have stuff that occurred to them later that they didn't have a chance to discuss in the particular working group. I think that section's pretty good. I think it was really well written by Lynn and you, and sure. Sidewalks, bike paths, and trails. This was from a public works point of view as opposed to some of the stuff later. Just as a side point, again, Karen, another little connectivity grant crossed my screen late last week. Amy forwarded something to me that was originated out of Central Cog, actually, although apparently all municipalities are eligible for small active transportation projects, is there any, and by small, I mean, I think they have a total pool of $200,000 to serve the whole state. Has Trails in particular discussed any small, like, tactical urbanist projects, you know, around bike lanes or pedestrian improvements, something that we could do small with shortbread?
I don't know what I don't know what the Plum Road connection to the airline involves, but that's downtown. I mean, if you're talking about more urban.
Not necessarily, although it certainly is logical that the denser areas would be the easiest to serve with small projects. If you were to suggest something for Plum Road, some small improvement that could be done on short dollars, what do you think it might be?
I haven't even been up there. This is Charlie's harping on this for months now, and I don't know what I haven't explored the property up there. I don't know whether it needs a walkway, a bridge, whether we even have access that way. So I can ask.
Okay.
No,
I mean, I can ask Charlie too.
All right. If it's in the woods, in a trail, I know they were talking about some kind of a bridge, or across that little river by the culvert on the airline, so people could get down there and see the culvert. Does that qualify? Something like that?
Maybe. Maybe. All right. I have it in my little notes here anyway. It's, you know, just the next thing I'm turning some attention to. So, all right.
I mean, is that for planning or infrastructure itself?
Well, there was a little bit of both. They had 3 categories. One was more education and planning, and one was more implementation. And then a third one, which was very basic indeed, was just the subsidy to install up to 10 bike racks in a given municipality. I mean, that's always a possible default. I was talking to Melinda via email today a little bit. She apparently in her last school district had put in place a walking school bus project, which is essentially accompanied walks for school kids in neighborhoods that lend themselves. And I had thought maybe of initiating an e-bike share program based at a town hall, at a school or something, but I'm just sort of starting to put ideas together for that.
When is the deadline for this one?
The 20th of November.
Okay.
Which is, it's a decent amount of time for me to put a grant together, except I'm starting from, I wasn't prepared for it, so I'd have to throw something together fast. But
I mean, would it cover benches?
Maybe.
I mean, that's something we
Maybe.
have discussed. I don't know exactly where, but there's been ongoing. We want to put benches behind the KFC again, or on the airline somewhere.
I mean, that counts as pedestrian infrastructure, for sure. Noting that here.
I know with the airline, they were supposed to get back to us. There was something about, being consistent with a certain style and stuff. I don't have that information.
Right.
But there are certainly other places.
Okay. Well, I have those notes there, so I will look. I think that does qualify as pedestrian infrastructure, and that might be an affordable enhancement to some of those areas. So, yeah, I knew you would be helpful. 4.6, public parks and green space, and this is a place where I actually have. I don't know if it's a comment or a question. We are repeating some of this information periodically. And I don't think it's necessarily bad to repeat, as long as we're not repeating in a way that is redundant. this inventory of public parks and green space does seem to me that it is redundant to what we start the recreation section with later, which is just this list of what the public parks are and what is available at them. So I wonder, and this might be a question for Leslie anyway, but you know, what differentiates these sections?
And are they consistent from one description to the other? I don't know if that's been looked at. You might want to just refer to another section, either here to the other or the other to here.
I'm reasonably sure that they're consistent because, of course, I typed them all. So I think,
Okay.
I think that's what sort of made them stand out to me. Is, of course, I've done all this typing, and when I'm coming up on the same stuff, I'm like, we've said this. Are we saying the same thing the same way?
Well, is this a section that has to be in there if it's covered in under recreation?
Well,
and then
I think it's important to address it as infrastructure, to situate it intellectually as something that Public Works is also responsible for, and not just recreation. Because what we discover is the same thing we discover with trails, which is that if we don't emphasize that it is also something that there is an expectation that DPW take responsibility for it, it's always going to be subordinate to road work because of mindset. So that is definitely why I chose to include it here. I'm not sure that I've cracked the nut of how to make it say what it needs to say while the other says something different. But maybe it does. I'm making a note here, but if anybody's got any ideas there, I'll take them.
Well, I'd have to look at it, the two sections again. I can't really read this stuff on the iPad now. You know, it's too small.
All right, I'll just keep scrolling until we get to something where we've got group comment. And then we did have the 4.7 suggested action steps for public works and infrastructure, stormwater core, watershed plan, subdivision regulations, taxation versus density, 10-year plan for major public facilities projects, violation and enforcement policy for transfer and recycling station use, revisit pay-as-you-throw options, installation of remote cameras in problem areas for rubbish dumping, equitable fee schedule for smaller commercial haulers, more grassroots initiatives to tackle local litter, prioritize recommendations from 2016 road safety analysis, collaborate on annual calendar of priorities with Public Works and Recreation Department and the Board of Selectmen, and programs featuring Thompson cemeteries.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was probably pretty comprehensive. Safety services, fire and EMS, emergency management, law enforcement, or strategies for not having any law enforcement. Constables, and I did, well, we'll get to there. We'll get there. Pandemic preparedness, response, and recovery. So the action steps here. And I did, I believe, suggest a couple of relevant things for trails. Where did we get here? Non-policing solutions to reduce speeds and mitigate hazards. Oh, yes, the development of the Regional Ranger Program. Incorporate regular maintenance of public lighting by DPW. And I did suggest an expansion of the constable program to include additional duties. And I did cite, because you thought, Karen, that they were that was something that was an eligible duty for constables, right?
It's been brought up. I mean, it depends how the selectmen define their duties. It's not for the transfer station to decide. I mean, if Rich at DPW decides to ask for that service from the selectmen, but
Well, so the big thing about the constables that I discovered as I was writing the section is that their duties are essentially completely undefined.
right.
That they have statutory authority to do quite a few things, of which I've suggested these three as being the most logical in our situation: abandoned motor vehicle citations, snowmobile ATV citations, or possibly enforcement of transfer and recycling station policies. But the ordinance that exists has almost no definition for what the constables are enabled to do in the town of Thompson.
Well, I mean, I assume it's whatever the selectmen at that time decide is their duties.
Joanne, were you a part of was that an ordinance that you were a part of working on ever?
Well, I've been on the committee since it was started, I don't know, like 8 or 10 years ago. So we discussed every single ordinance in the book. So I remember, yes, we did discuss it, but I'm trying to recall who we would have had revisit it to see if there could be any changes. I don't recall. I'd have to go back through my notes because I don't know that we've ever changed it.
Oh, it certainly looks like it's never been touched since it was first adopted. I mean, it is really very bare bones.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
it essentially just defines the number of them and that they are appointed by boards of selectmen. That's really all it does.
Yeah, I can remember a brief conversation many years ago. I think, when Charlie Paquette was on the chairman at the time, and we discussed it, but we had so many ordinances to review that, we had hundreds of pages, just like this document is, that we didn't go over word for word and rehash anything. So, but that's a good point. If you think that they probably should be more detailed in their duties. That's probably a really good point. I could bring that up at the next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I did have a fascinating conversation with a guy who is a constable, who said that even he, and he's a retired police officer from, I think, Webster or Dudley, 18 years on the local police force, really didn't know. I mean, he gets his calls every once in a while to be present at town meetings or elections, I guess. But for example, he's received calls asking if he can serve warrants, or not serve warrants, serve subpoenas, I think.
Eviction? No.
No, subpoenas, I think. Right, and theoretically, yes, but not within, so there are things I think that some of these guys would probably be willing to do. Now on a totally volunteer basis, that I don't know. But
well, all right. So if the constables are all volunteers, right?
Yes, they are. They are completely uncompensated.
All right. So what came up with the transfer station enforcement? Like the committee years ago would say, well, one of us will come up on a Saturday and we'll enforce the recycling and check people's bags. And we were told, no, volunteers cannot do that. So if a constable's a volunteer,
It's a different kind of volunteer.
Right.
I
but
mean,
whether it's insurance or whether it's union, I'm not sure.
Well, they might get paid on a per diem or per request item too. Like if they're directing traffic at a parade or when we need a constable, which isn't very often, but they must get compensated at some point, I would think.
Well, I think in the town of Thompson, they do not direct any traffic. At the Maker Fair, Leslie came on. We had fire police, right, Leslie?
Yeah, it was, we just called the, community fire, and they sent some folks over.
Yeah, so, and they do not get paid detail work, which is probably also shameful, but they don't. So that's been the town's solution for that kind of thing. You know, there's all kinds of equity questions that come up anytime you're talking about using volunteer labor. It's got its pluses and its minuses. But that is a good point, Karen.
Sorry, I came late. What section are you on?
We are right at the end of section 5, the public safety section. But actually, we can go back a little bit because this was a question that is very relevant to you. In
Sorry,
section, that's okay. It's casual. In section 4.6, public parks and green space, I had made the comment that this stuff here about the recreation areas is very repetitive of what we go back in and talk about in recreation and trails. And I had made the point, and I think it is still an important point, that I do think we should have this in the public works section, the infrastructure section, to emphasize that it is in fact infrastructure and does require municipal priority along those lines. But how do we want to say things differently here than we are saying also about its value as a recreation asset?
I think you can leave it. I think you can leave it there and the description, and in the rec piece, there'll be a map showing where those are, and it'll say for detailed description, see 4.6 public parks and green space.
All right, so let me add that.
So like they're
here.
at least named in the rec section, but not in detail of what they are. They're named in detail in public parks and green space. I think one of the reasons why I asked what section you're on is because when I saw the piece about the lighting for parks, so one of my challenges was we did add this year or attempt to add money to the budget for lighting specifically, but a challenge in general, and it goes beyond just budgeting for lighting maintenance, is that the parks budget needs to be more detailed in general. So right now it's just, you know, payroll and general supplies, where really we should be detailing out that parks budget for lighting, graffiti, trail maintenance, parks, you know, park repairs, you know, park supplies. It should be just a more detailed line items than just, you know, supplies.
Right. And that detail you think more is on the infrastructure side is what I'm taking as the implication of this conversation. I mean, the public lighting piece we included as an element of planning for public safety.
Yes. I like, yes. That's good.
You know, and the comment has been made in a couple of sections that there are areas where we are being repetitive, but coming from different angles. So I think absolutely a winning argument is that public lighting is a public safety matter. That argument also has implications for recreation and for public works.
Yes, I think wording it in that way will help to reference it in the budget process, as safety seems to be a priority of the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen, as it should be.
What you might want to add into the 4.5 public parks and green space is actually what DPW does at those. So you might want to say where there are lawns and where there is brush and where there is, you know, the kinds of things that they're responsible for there. Would that make it different enough and clearer?
Yes, I think probably so. The mowing, brush. What else does DPW do for the parks, Leslie?
They remove all trash. They remove all trash. They're really responsible for all of the maintenance in the park. So if there's a broken bench or there's graffiti or they are responsible. Their department, yeah, they're responsible for all maintenance. If there's a light out, if there's a fence that's broken, you know, all.
So is everything they repair because you call them and tell them, or do they have regular schedules to visit these places themselves?
They do not have regular schedules to visit these places. We're trying to get on a regular, and actually I just sent an email to Amy and Rich because we went in January last year and we want to go before it gets too cold. So I just sent them an email to go, to see if we could go in the next 4 weeks before Thanksgiving to do that walkthrough. So it is becoming an annual thing that we do. No, they only do them if I notify them or if somebody in the community notifies them and it goes through the selectman's office and gets added to their list.
And that is definitely a point that we raise in several different topics, this idea of actually having an organized plan and calendar.
I mean, I will say that they are aware, because they're picking up trash and they're, doing road work and out and around the community and live in town, they are aware of some of those needs, but they're not going back on a trail behind Heritage Way to know that a tree is down or, to know that, I don't know, just very like a picnic table's broken or something. They're not going, routinely going to those parks, but they are, yeah, that's it.
But like on some of the playgrounds, whether you want to elucidate that they go monthly to clean up trash or, what their actual.
Yeah, they're not inspecting those playgrounds yearly or, monthly or anything like that. Which is the hope that those parks and playgrounds will get inspected annually in the fall, as they should be, probably for our insurance as well. That's a question I should ask, is what's the requirement for our insurance for all of that playground equipment?
So Tara, just before you leave, at the end of 5.5 that you were missing a couple of bullets on the last couple of items.
Yeah, that was a weird formatting thing. I couldn't get those bullets to populate. I don't know what I'm going to do about that, but okay. I've tried multiple times.
Uh-huh.
I come up with weird glitchy things every once in a while when I'm putting this together. And
I noticed when yes, same here. Yeah.
I don't know if it's because I'm moving between different versions, between home and work, and when people send me stuff and I copy and paste, but I don't know. Some of the stuff is just coming through weird. But yes, I even have my little hand-drawn bullet points in there. 6.1, historic landmarks and artifacts. We added the lithic structures based on somebody's suggestions. So this is highlighted in yellow because the town sold that parcel where that boat launch was planned for. So I need to replace
They did
this.
that already? Wow.
Amy and Suzanne voted to sell it to the single bidder, who is the owner of the parcel, not 1405, but the one who wanted it for access to his own property.
You mean next door?
Right.
Wow.
I forget the number. So yeah, I know. For a pot of lentils, I think. So Ken pointed out that there is also access at 0 Wilsonville Road, which is connected to the parcel that has the dam. So that could be an area for development, but this particular thing is probably dead in the water unless somebody is going to go back and negotiate with this new private owner. I don't have a strong feeling about that being viable.
No. Well, he can get the poison ivy down there.
There's a spacing error, which I see. Do we want to add any more about the train wreck park site here in history, or do we want to keep that powder dry for later in the document? I mean, this is really talking about the history, so I think we can probably flesh it out more later. Was somebody just trying to say something? I couldn't tell if it was background noise or just somebody.
Oh, it was me. Sorry, I was moving my computer towards where I'm
Okay.
dinner and took it off mute. Sorry.
All right. Historical Society. There's nobody on from the Historical Society, but that was as they wished it to be. Villages, I think we beat that horse to death pretty thoroughly. Municipal branding, we can always take more commentary on this. If anybody has any perspective on this section. Leslie, have you given this any more reading since we last looked at it?
This piece, the green and growing community piece, or all of it?
Yeah, well, the municipal branding section, which is mostly the green and growing community thing.
No, I have not.
Okay. And we do posit a lot of action steps coming out of it, which are based mostly on that NECOG study, marketing strategy, social media, outdoor recreation, local agriculture.
You know what I just thought of, Tira, is I don't know if I should include this on the rec piece, but partner organizations like having really in writing and in documentation the relationship between Nikon, the soccer group using Bull Hill and Thompson Little League. Like, we don't mention any of the Little League fields in this because we don't really maintain those, although they are town property. I think that the Little League pays like $1 a year or $1 every 10 years to like rent it or something, so, but establishing, having those, sorry.
Skip ahead and just note that. No, it's okay.
Thank you. As I'm
reading
you out.
Partnerships with recreation. Okay. Housing. I was hoping Joe Perotti was going to make it on because he was going to take a look more at the housing section, but that's okay. Joanne, did you have anything you wanted to add into any of the text that we've developed around housing?
No, I think it's been covered rather nicely, so should stay the way it is.
Now, Karen did bring up in an earlier discussion that she found, I think, particularly this section on affordable housing very subjective, and I haven't really gone in and done much yet.
We don't have a lot.
It was a stumper to me on how to make it less subjective. I don't know, Karen.
Tara, no, I didn't look at it again, but I mean, this you have to have this final, and it's got to be approved by planning and zoning. Is that the way I understand?
In December.
This?
In December.
So
but
if they don't buy into this philosophy, then they're not going to accept this.
So let me do this. I'm going to send excerpt.
I thought the head of planning and zoning was going to reassess this with you.
Yeah, Joe, but he couldn't make the meeting tonight. The recent rehash of the zoning regulations does allow for a lot more density, but affordability is not actually a planning and zoning directive per se. Like they could theoretically zone for percentages of affordable housing. They certainly have not chosen to do so.
I don't know what it does. Really?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it does usually end up in zoning codes. Now,
town is going to designate an area. Oh, this will be our low income area. Are you kidding me? You say those words and people will be screaming.
Oh, no, 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 no. I would never suggest that. In fact, that's completely counterproductive. That defeats the whole purpose of having a proper affordable housing plan. Excuse me. Now, I did receive a grant from Department of Housing to develop a comprehensive affordable housing plan for the town of Thompson. I haven't moved on that yet because the Department of Housing hasn't published their updated guidelines yet. That was supposed to be the end of September. And the director there that I talked to, Miguel Rivera, tells me they're probably 45 to 60 days behind. So it is something that's going to get developed, but because it hasn't been developed yet and is not going to be developed ahead of this document, I'm kind of dancing around some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably, Karen, where that subjectivity is starting to come in. But again, I haven't cracked the nut of how to make it more objective.
Well, I mean, if this flies with nobody saying anything, then fine. I just thought you might get some feedback, you know.
What section, Tara? Are you trying to?
7.2 affordable housing specifically. I think the rest of the stuff in housing is plainer in its presentation.
Why don't you just have George take a look at it and try to change some of the verbiage to be a little more subjective. He seems to be pretty good at that. Or, you know.
Yeah, maybe.
There's someone else on the planning and zoning who could, get the message across. But like Karen was saying,
I think what I will do is I will excerpt, because it's an item on the P&Z agenda every month as sort of update from me to them. And we have a meeting coming up Monday.
Does the Board of Selectmen need to sign off on this before it goes to wherever it needs to go to?
No, the statutory responsibility is planning and zoning. So that's why.
You think they're going to read this? I'm sorry.
I think some of them will. I think some of them will read it very thoroughly, actually.
Okay.
Although of those, at least two of them are already on, this working group, Joe Perotti and Charlene.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're the only ones from, and Brian Santos sort of came on late. I think if I ask them to read the section specific to housing for comment, that they will probably do so. So I've got a note to myself here to ask Gloria to include it on Monday's agenda, because we've got one coming up. It's a different perspective than the last big document we asked them to work on, which was regulatory, right? This is not regulatory. This is more philosophical. But yeah, I'll do that. I'll ask planning and zoning to comment on this section specifically from Monday. And we'll see if we can pull something more specific to the town out of there. Is that, the stuff on affordable housing, I'm kind of talking in generalities in absence of having the plan worked on yet, except for some of this stuff, which is specific, talking about Pineview Courts, and those are our designated affordable units. We don't have enough. I can tell you that from the point of view of the state, we don't have enough. Full stop. Which at some point, when some of that legislation gets longer teeth, may be detrimental to us in more real ways. Right now, the main penalty is that if you don't have enough affordable housing set-asides, if you're below 10% in the community, and a developer comes in with a plan under 830G, and that plan ignores or sidesteps local zoning regulations, the burden is on the town to prove that the project shouldn't go forward, and towns do not win those arguments very well.
I was just gonna ask Tira, is any of the mill designated to be low income housing?
No.
I know like when Putnam did theirs, didn't a certain percentage had to be or something like, or a certain percentage of theirs is?
No, he has not proposed any set-asides for affordability. It's been one of my big sort of not happy pieces about that whole project, but he's a private developer. He has the right to develop it in whatever way he likes. There is no state requirement that says you must set aside a certain number of units for affordability. I believe Massachusetts does have that. Connecticut opted to go this other way. They tell the towns that you've got to come to this threshold, but they didn't put the onus on individual private developers.
So it's just at the kind of collaboration between the town and the developer. So that would just be like what Putnam and their developer came to or whatever in order to maintain that threshold for Putnam.
Right. Because I don't think Putnam's at 10% either, although they might be. That might have been a way that they opted to try to up their percentage, which is the usual way that these things go. And the way that they work, and the way that they work really well, and this is my soapbox I'm getting on here now, is when you incorporate your set-asides into your market rate developments in ways that are seamless. In other words, you're not giving a builder's grade unit to an affordable unit and a premium grade unit to somebody else. They're all the same. You just do your math so that you have your set-asides, and they can be for 80% of median, 60% of median, all the way down to 25% of median, I think. There's a development out in Windsor Locks that I went to look at on a development tour with Charlie and Brian Lafredo last fall, I think. And they were a couple of weeks away from opening at that time, and they were already 85 to 90% full occupancy, the market rate, and the affordable units. They were beautiful. There was no difference between the one and the other. You still get credit checked on them. It's not a voucher program. So that's sort of the changing in the mindset. And when you mix income levels, just like when you mix other kinds of demographics together, the result is that everybody gets a better experience out of it. You don't get pockets of poverty. You don't get pockets of segregation. People are just neighbors. So that's what those programs are meant to do.
Yeah, I know that the numbers at the mill in Putnam, I believe, were pretty low when I read it. I just remember, but I mean, again, it was still sort of a set aside, and I didn't know if that was a town initiative or a state initiative or what was behind that. But I just remember reading that it was, whatever, 4 apartments or 5 apartments or whatever were designated for.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you specifically, who was the driver of that, but it would be logical to me that was a part of the negotiation of the development process to try to get to that 10% threshold. I mean, that's the sensible thing to do. So looking at suggested action steps here for housing, and this is with the understanding that I'm going to give this to P&Z on Monday also for comment. And Joanne, I'm particularly interested in anything you have to say here. Is there anything we could add to this suggested action steps that we want to articulate?
Well, can I have a chance to review it a little bit further?
Of course.
Thank you. Yeah. I don't want to be too spontaneous. Give me a chance to digest it.
Actually, there is one missing here that I added late this afternoon on my handwritten copy. This is an older version of the draft. And this was actually based on something George sent to me in terms of, because we've talked in a couple of places about, advertising the value of Thompson real estate, and that should probably be carried over in here. but have that an item, included in a town's marketing or economic development budget for advertising Thompson as a community of opportunity. And now he was talking specifically about disaffected urban residents, in the time of COVID, in terms of that being a trend that some have projected is going to continue, flight from urban to suburban districts, based on more of fear of pandemic than any other prior reasons for urban flight. So I did include that, which is not here on what you see on the screen. Economic development, and this also is on the agenda for the EDC meeting this week. But Joe, anybody who's got anything they wanted to add here that they think is missing. Overview, that's more general. We went, on the day that we discussed this, we went back and forth a lot with this inclusion of the SWOT analysis from the NECOG study. It's still here. Everybody had kind of mixed feelings about it. I don't know. I think I also have mixed feelings about it, but it does give a concise illustration of some of the challenges and some of the strengths altogether. And we did leave off with the, and there's going to be more to come out of this, out of the EDC next two meetings, I think, but we certainly have time to discuss it a little bit now as well. Economic development initiatives, I will tell you right now, when I wrote this, I was exhausted, so I just pulled the three off the top of my head that were most prominent to me: the pop-up shops for Riverside Park, the airline trail, which I left out the train wreck park there because I was exhausted, and the 65 Main project. But I feel like I'm missing missing things, and that's my office and job. So what am I missing, guys? What have we been talking about as economic development measures?
The little shops in Riverside.
Yeah, that's this.
That's
Yeah.
number one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I recently named it the 11th Village because it needed a name.
Very clever. I like that.
That's funny. I think that those are the main ones.
I feel like I'm missing something. Joanne, when we go in on Wednesday to discuss this, I mean, are there any topics that you'd like to bring up that we should be doing as a commission, as on EDC, that we can feather into this? I figure there's going to be 2 or 3 more subsections in this.
Well, perhaps, and that's why I really didn't look at this too much, because I was thinking we were going to review it on Wednesday night. So okay. There wasn't much to talk about tonight, since we haven't really discussed it in full until Wednesday.
Okay.
Unless you
we
you have something you want to put on the agenda, something specific.
No, I just sent this whole excerpt of Section 8 over to Ashley to forward to everybody, so that we can discuss it as a commission more fully.
All right.
Tara, if this is a green and growing economic development, there's nothing in here about promoting the agriculture.
Good catch.
Is that something?
See?
Is that something?
It is. It definitely is to me. I mean, a little bit the 65 Main project is, because that's an ag incubator, but I think we can definitely be more thorough in describing other agricultural opportunities. And those may be agritourism. well, definitely agritourism. I mean, the agriculture section is quite robust, but again, we want to repeat from different angles some of this stuff. So, food systems.
Well, then the bike trails bringing all these races to town. I don't know.
Yeah, and this might be the place then, Karen, to actually bring that up, because it is something we've talked about. We've probably talked about it more at EDC than it's been talked about at Trails in terms of,
I think
doing outreach and development.
Right. I mean, this has all been Charlie's brainstorming, but I don't see anybody on the committee wanting to implement.
Yeah, we've
You know
tried to take up a couple of small measures on the EDC side, letters to businesses for when these races were supposed to come out, consider specials, consider investing in a bike rack. That was a very dip the toe in the water kind of thing.
Yeah,
Of course,
I mean,
COVID
from my perspective, that's not why I'm on the Trails Committee. And so I haven't pushed this stuff. I mean, if Charlie wants to push it, he needs his own separate group of people working on bike races. I mean, this is not, I don't
I
see
think
it
it's
as
totally fair to say that is more of an economic development initiative than a trails initiative.
I would agree. I would agree. And since I have crossover between the two, then it would make sense for my office to sort of, bridge that, but I do think it's an EDC initiative because we're talking about people coming to town and, going to businesses.
right.
So.
Right. Not necessarily the stewardship of the trails themselves or the development of the trails themselves, but the promotion of the use to a group of users.
Right. And of course, trails would be, involved in the event or the promotion of the event or the volunteer recruitment event, just as we were before. But I do think when you were working with that gentleman on the other bike race, it was more of an EDC. I mean, it was two-part. It was volunteer recruitment, but it was also business relationship, it was, town business relationships.
Yeah. Right.
So it was a twofold. And so it was really your office, navigating the business side of things and then the volunteer piece of it. Sadly that race did not happen, but I do think too, if we're actually going to go after and promote the town as being a location and bringing that too, it's sort of having an idea in that package kind of already together. But
yeah, good call. Whoever brought up the bike races, Karen, I think. Yes. Okay, and that'll give us more to talk about on Wednesday too. Mm-hmm. Like that. Transportation. So overview is easy. Road safety audit is what it is. I am expecting I might even have some more back from Dennis in my email. I've been plowing backwards because I spent all last week actually writing that grant for the wayfinding stuff, which did go out the door. I'll be happy to know. So hopefully we'll get some money to make some signs. I am expecting Dennis and Jeff Bolte and Charlie to come back with some more stuff, particularly about complete streets.
Can I just want to, the business about the signs,
Yeah.
the other grant that we talked about back, don't go back, but on page 31 and you were asking about the pedestrian infrastructure, maybe some of the signs.
Yes, I know what you're talking. Possibly, they would be small ones. So for whatever it's worth, the proposal that I sent over to ConDOT for the full program that Kelsey put together, costed out at just about $160,000. So I'm guessing if this pool of money for the entire state is, between $200,000 and $300,000 for all 160 some towns, that they're looking for something smaller.
Right, but
But
this could be
benches,
an adjunct to that, possibly.
yes, as a wayfinding tie-in.
Well,
Um,
did you just get that recent picture from Brian LaFredo about the trail crossing signs and with the locations? Well, I know Leslie
I
got
don't,
it because she answered.
you know what? If I got it, I don't think I saw it because I still have a bunch of stuff that's buried back in my email.
Yeah,
So
I
maybe
got
that's
it.
one that.
It seems like what I can gather is that it's the Last Green Valley who's printing those signs and putting them up. And so it's
Really?
just, yeah, because Lyanne answered and then she said like, oh, glad you're noticing. It's been taking us a while. And then if you look on the bottom of the sign, it has a Last Green Valley logo on it.
Oh, I didn't look that close. I was just like, oh, isn't this a DEEP sign?
Right. So
But
I think they're working with I think Last Green Valley is working with DEP and getting them for all of those markers is sort of what I understood. I mean, I'll follow up with Lyanne, but that's what from that email stream, that's what I gathered from it. Because I was like,
okay.
okay, do we just order it and we can get it, or is there somebody already working on it?
I didn't see anything back from Leanne. So, okay.
Yeah.
So Leslie, can you forward that to me? He probably did send it to me, and I may have just breezed by it, not really realizing what it was, or it could just be I haven't gotten into it yet. But if it's in the top of my email thread, I'll see it.
Yes. I mean, I can't forward it to you now. I'll forward it to you tomorrow.
No, just in general. I don't need to see it this second. I am going back up there a little bit.
Sorry, I interrupted.
No, it's fine. Just want to find a logical place here. Additional intersections requiring attention. I have the pictures of those. This was from the Yukon study. That was a piece that Jeff and Dennis were going to come back with, actually, because everything I have is very geared towards the Route 12 corridor, because that's where all of the efforts have gone in terms of determining. But I know that there's some outside that corridor that need attention. Complete streets, and this does, I think, tie in with trails. Karen, have you guys given complete streets programming any kind of thought?
I never heard of it.
Well, all right then.
I will read this. I didn't see this. I really only went back and looked at sections that I was responsible for. Complete streets.
Yeah, it's an active transportation sort of overarching philosophy or program, and a lot of places are using this language and incentivizing or encouraging development of complete streets programs. So in other words, your roads aren't just for cars, they're for all these people too. How do we make them safer? How do we, make them more usable for everybody? Trails always has a piece of that. Bike lanes are a more obvious piece of that. But I didn't know if you guys had ever gone through
No, we've
that.
never discussed that term ever.
Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, let's scroll through that. There's a picture of the Putnam sidewalk rehab, just for illustration. Brand new sidewalk, crappy old unusable sidewalk. So hopefully sometime next year, the Route 12 sidewalk will look like this. We have we have been told that ConnDOT is preparing their letter of commitment to fund to us. So they will put us in the queue to receive the funding to rehab that whole section of sidewalk, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
Just about a mile from Route 200 to Rawson Ave. Bus shelters and crosswalks, and I don't know what to do with this either, but I'll ask Charlie about it sometime.
Well,
Okay.
it's so hypothetical.
Huh? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool that he did it, but I'm not sure what we're going to do with it as a hypothetical. Are we, I don't know how we take this scribble and make it data. Or if we should. I mean, he spent some time on it.
Well, not being a
Uh,
biker, I don't, you know, I don't know whether those were even viable roads that he's on. Nobody's checked it.
I think Dennis is actually quite a biker, so I'll get back. I think he's in Maine this week.
But if you're going to
Agriculture.
include something like that, you've got to really make it clear that this is just a proposal being explored. You know, that it isn't a plan.
Right. And it may be that we don't include this. You know, he happened to send this over as I was working on the section, and we're not done with the transportation section. So I kind of dropped it in there sort of as a place marker.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if we're thoroughly describing complete streets, if we then need to do peel outs for pedestrian and bicycling access, because it's kind of implied all in the one heading. That's maybe a discussion for me and those guys. The agriculture section I'm actually pretty happy with. We had an excellent breakout session with Carolyn and Judy Rondo and Lynn Landry, and then Kai's Orr came in and provided quite a bit. There's a lot of good factoids in here that I do think we can be building on. Agriculture doesn't necessarily bring in as much in grand list as business does, but the services that they require, they still provide more in taxation than they take away in the town. So there, and obviously we've all talked about how it is a part of the local character in many, many different sections. Leslie, if you have any insights here on the recreational tie-in in agriculture, that we maybe haven't hit yet, I'll take them.
I could spend some time thinking about that. Yeah. I mean, it's mostly just
agriculture happens to be one. Go ahead.
I think in that piece, it's mostly just like supportive, like in the rec section where we talked about other commissions and departments working through recreation for the promotion of their, events and activities. So they do like an ag day and like supporting them in that promotion and, and in their needs. But yeah, I can certainly think about those opportunities. I mean,
so maybe drop in something in the suggested action steps as, agriculture and recreation working together to develop community events.
Yeah, or cross promotion of events, or collaborating with recreation on the recreation department on can increase marketing efforts or something like that.
Okay, recreation and trails. Here's what you guys definitely came here for. So let's just start and go. I mean, we talked about a lot of this last week, obviously. What else do we want to get in here? Leslie first, mostly, and then Karen. I mean, without going through the whole read through again.
Well, I didn't get any feedback from anybody after your meeting, so I assume other people attended your.
Yeah. Yes, I did. Whatever I had for edits is in this version up until whatever I added today, which mostly is some stuff that Judy Rondo had suggested as additions, like stuff about the disc golf over at the dam and some nice maps in. So
yeah,
Leslie,
my plan was to look at this week and then to, I have a rec meeting the following week. So to present them with the draft. The big thing that I didn't work on intentionally was action steps, because I don't want to work on action steps until the goals are agreed upon by the commission, and that's kind of, those are set, and that the action steps are something that we as a commission agree to, because they're not, going to be possible for me to complete without the support of the commission. So I want them to have ownership in those action steps. So that's really
Right.
where I think the rec piece needs to be buttoned up is, and Renee won't have a chance. The hope was for maybe Renee to look at it before the commission or work on it, but she doesn't think, I don't know, maybe I can see if she has a little bit of time this week, but it might be that I'm presenting it to the commission next week, and then Renee and I are working on it, and then a final draft is going to them at a November meeting. But I think they're going to be pretty good on, I don't think they need to see a final draft. I think that they just are going to want to have input into this draft, and then.
Okay, and that's next week. I thought it was this week that your meeting was.
It's next week.
Okay. So I assume you want the same thing to enable them to describe their own desires for their roles, responsibilities, and advocacy.
Yes, I mean, that was taken, directly
right off
from
the website.
And off of last year's. So the other piece that we talked about was some of the back history, and so I've done a little bit of that research on when was camp started, when was the before and after school program started, when did the rec director become full-time, just to put that in the back history to kind of see the growth of the program. And even just, there's nothing in here that talks about, and I think it might have been Joanne, but someone else who mentioned in the last meeting that just a general overview of, okay, well, how many programs or special events is rec running, and what are the main responsibilities of that department. So yeah, I'll work on it again. Like I said, I'll work on it this week, and then I'll have something to present to the rec commission next week.
I think you definitely want, Leslie, to articulate very strongly, not just that recreations is some parks and some programs, right? Because that's the argument that you always have to try to disarm in budget season, right? As well, it's recreation, it's extra. You need to make your case that it isn't extra at all, that it is an essential service to a certain percentage of the population. It could serve more if it were, afforded the level of priority that it should be.
I think that's also where putting in a piece of the partnerships, we do sort of serve as an apex for, trails, and now EDC and branding, and
now economic development then.
Now EDC, and also really with even with other organizations as well. I'm hoping TBA and the fire departments now with this collaboration of this Halloween event. So I think it's starting. So I do want to emphasize in somewhere the partnerships, and like you said, sort of being the hub of the community events, and that way. So yeah, I'll work on that.
All right, so let's skip ahead to trails, which Karen did not have a chance to attend last week. I mean, I don't think we've done a lot of change to your text here. You said most of what I've added in here.
It was great, Karen. Nice job. Very thorough.
Yeah, I think the only thing I saw was that confusion at the end of, what's a challenge, what's a goal, how do we define those?
Yeah, and I definitely had that. And I started to and did not finish, identify things that at least were phrased as challenges. And then this is in the format of the old document, so I haven't really
I mean, I think some
yet.
of it is redundant. I picked right, but it just where it's placed may be more important than what it is. So if you're putting it under challenges, then it looks like all those things are challenges. Maybe they belong under, I don't know, what the committee does or something. What acquire, enhance, develop. Maybe that belongs.
Well, let's go back up to that. Thompson Trails Committee. I mean, we have the mission statement, we describe it.
Right, and then you could go goals, and you could take that list of the things that we do on a regular basis, which are the partnerships and supporting others, take that whole list, move it above challenges, maybe.
And when you say that whole list, you mean this whole list?
Acquire, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, these are things that are they're challenges, but they're also, we're dealing with those challenges. So we're doing these all the time.
Okay, yeah, I see where you are. I see where you're headed. Incorporate into the roles of the commission.
Because when you get down to challenges, we're not really talking about the committee, we're talking about for the whole town. So if we pull those
Yes.
out, like fundraising, motorized vehicle abuse, that cuts across some other departments. It's
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, I
And
agree
then-
with that.
And then there's one more list, go down one more page. So I'd have to look at the action steps again in light of how we revise that.
Yeah, and a lot of this is stuff that I was peeling out of where we've made recommendations, or where your bullet points looked to me more like opportunities for action, and that's
Okay.
what this is. Plus some stuff I think that Leslie had suggested. Now,
Take out the boat
here's-
launch. Take out the Wilsonville boat launch.
Oh, yeah. Wilsonville
I'm sorry,
boat
Karen.
launch.
Ugh.
We're all sorry. Where the hell is it? I don't know
All right,
what
I'm
it
going to ask a question. This is off topic, but tomorrow night on the selectmen's meeting agenda, there's some more land transfers.
Yes.
There are. I don't know what those parcels are exactly, but I believe some of them were tiny little lots around Little Pond. I know that Cindy Dunn and Amy went on a site visit, and I'm pretty sure that's where it was.
Well, I mean, is this
Um,
something that needs public oversight tomorrow night?
Well, if it's on the agenda, that's probably because they're going to seek a disposal recommendation, or did they say they already had bids on it? I don't have the
know.
agenda in front of me. Oh.
I
I
don't
think
know. I mean,
I looked at the agenda today and it said like possible action on all the like land things that I saw. It said like discussion and
But it didn't
possible-
say anything like, it didn't say opening bid.
No, I didn't see that. But I didn't
So
like
then,
I didn't read it very, very carefully. I just sort of
But
wanted to
in-
see the general gist of what was going on.
yeah, in light of the loss of the Wilsonville boat launch property, I'm just asking if there needs to be some oversight tomorrow night.
I would say it is always appropriate to dial into any selections meeting
Yeah.
where a disposal of property is being proposed. If it's possible action, what's probably happening is, and I assume it's Amy, is going to propose that they bring those parcels to planning and zoning for approval of disposition. That's under an ordinance, and I forget what the ordinance is, because that is the established step. I am pretty sure that these lots in question, although I'd have to look them up individually on the parcel map, are some
I mean,
of
I'm
those
just wondering
little
if it's
otherwise
open space that should be staying open space, and are they giving them away for development?
I don't think that's what these ones are, but they might be. But I'd have to look at the actual parcels on the parcel map to tell you for sure. I'm pretty sure they're little podunk former campsites.
Is anyone who's on the wetlands committee also on trails? Like, where's the overlap of
Well,
knowledge?
Charlie's on
Okay.
wetlands. Yeah,
So that's the overlap of knowledge
yeah,
of what's going on.
Yes,
in each.
and I think he's the only one, right?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just had thought that maybe adding to the trails, meetings, there is a wetlands update section, like a commission, or anything that's like of importance to the Trails Committee from the Wetlands Commission. I don't know, like how we would get that, how we would sort of be informed of these kinds of transactions or things that are
Yeah,
happening.
I don't know either, because I don't
The
know.
Wetland Commission knew about this Wilsonville boat launch and they knew it was on the agenda, I'm sure. But we didn't know in time to,
Right, but the
So-
perspective of wetlands is more regulatory than developmental. Well, not more
Right.
regulatory, it's entirely regulatory. It is not developmental. So from the perspective of the Inland Wetlands Committee, they are looking to make sure that proposed developments are occurring in ways that conform to the regulatory structure. They don't take positions on whether a proposed development is in and of itself desirable.
Okay.
Yeah, they operate under statute on a pretty
Yeah.
defined mandate.
Yeah, I think I'm just more so thinking of things that might be of interest to the Trails Committee or to other departments that are happening in wetlands, and how are those, because nobody can read minutes from or agendas from every single commission,
Right.
but so much crossover, so of things that are of an interest, or that the Trails Committee should sort of be in the know of just what's happening with land transfers and development of lands. Like that's, I think, how do they, without somebody from the Wetlands Commission saying, oh, Trails might be interested in this, how can we structurally get that information? So maybe even just a review or a review of those minutes, and just before, and knowing, okay, well, what's of interest that we're watching. And
Yeah, I wonder if the solution isn't more of a sharing of agendas than a sharing of minutes. Well, I guess it depends on whether a meeting is before or after another
yes, the sharing of
meeting
agenda.
happens, right?
I think that's so maybe just getting, are you on the, or do you get the agenda for wetlands, Karen?
No, I signed up to see the selectmen's agendas, and and I don't always, can't always go to their meetings, or, this one alerted me because of the way it was worded, and I didn't know what it meant.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, if it's discussion and possible action, that almost certainly means that somebody has approached, probably Amy, but one of the selectmen or the board of selectmen, to inquire about a town-owned property. I know that there are occasionally inquiries about little tiny unbuildable lots that the town has acquired through tax seizures that abut other people's properties, and they ask the town if they can buy them. That is usually what happens. That's effectively what happened with the Wilsonville boat launch. It's just that was a bigger piece of property that happened to have a purpose that had been identified as possible there. That is not usually the case with these. But in this case, in the Wilsonville boat launch case, yes, it was. But it's still always worth knowing what the parcels are.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll talk to Charlie, and maybe there's a way to, he usually, if something's coming up, he says something. Because I wouldn't know.
And there's a timing issue there too.
Yeah. Well, but I don't know the process. So, all right, they're selling, this is off topic, but the selectmen decide to sell something. They vote at a meeting. I don't know how you object to this, except to voice something, but Trails doesn't have any authority here.
No, it's just the authority of your voice. Joanne, I saw that you were raising your hand.
Yes, is it all right if I step out of the meeting at this point in time, since none of these
I think we're almost done anyway, Joanne.
Good. Okay. All right. I just wanted to
Good
let you know
night.
I leave
Good
the
night.
meeting.
Well, I'll see you Wednesday.
Yep. Toodaloo.
Yeah, we can brainstorm this another time and sort of just
Yeah.
see what's going to be the best way to get that information. So that, and like you said, Karen, it just happens so fast because it could be that, wetlands could vote on something and then it goes straight to selectmen and it never gets to trails because trails is only meeting every other month, or it's just
So
because we're timing of it.
maybe we list up here in the challenges something like coordinating with other departments or something. I don't know.
Yeah, let me do that. I'm trying to brainstorm this as we're talking about it, because it obviously we're talking about it in context of trails and wetlands, but there's all kinds of cross purpose between departments. So maybe
we've been talking about it
the answer
it's department head
is
meetings.
actually, department head meetings. So maybe the answer is actually not in this section at all. Maybe it's in the civic engagement and governance section, requesting agendas be posted further out or shared to department heads, not necessarily requiring us to subscribe to them. I mean, I am subscribed to a bunch, but not everybody is.
I mean, we do have a lot of crossover because of it's just that so much of trails is now embedded into sort of, rec and EDC and so many other things that it's, I think there's a lot of crossover that's happening. So just keeping those lines of communication clear. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's not just a trails issue or a land swap issue. I mean, it's everything. I mean, it's between DPW and, EDC, it's between the tax office and rec. I mean, it's all over the place. It's just interdepartment and commission communication.
All right, I'm scribbling my note under the governance section, sharing of agendas with commission chairs. Not just
agendas, but like pertinent information, like thinking about, this department or this commission, it's of interest to them, or they should be involved in that process, and not operating in like silos.
Yeah.
Correspondence on mutual interest.
There are people in town hall and there are people who are not in town hall.
Correct.
So even scuttlebutt gossip doesn't make it necessarily where it needs to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Even Facebook doesn't make it where it needs to go.
You mean you don't think you get more scuttlebutt and gossip than you'd ever want?
Although the only reason I knew about like a conflict on Bull Hill on Saturday that was going to happen is just because we live in a small town, and the guy at the Young Marines was talking to a guy who was like, "Oh yeah, my kids are going to be at practice on Bull Hill when you're at the same time you're there." And so then he called, and I was like, "Well, whoopsies." So that's like where it pays to have people just talking in the grocery store. So otherwise, everyone would have just showed up on Saturday, and we would have been double booked. But.
Speaking of cross communication, Karen, if you want to join me and Amy on the site walk up at the Blaine Road Bridge tomorrow at 8:15 in the morning, you are absolutely welcome. You're probably the only other person who might have a truly good perspective on what's gone on up there in the past, but don't feel compelled.
Where are you actually meeting? At
the Ravenel Road
at Ravenel
entry point to the Blaine Road Bridge area. I don't actually know where it is myself, and I live on Blaine Road, but I'm going to go up there and find it at 8:15 in the morning.
You're going to the opposite side, Ravenel. You can't get across, so you're either going down from the town side down to the abutments, or you're coming in from Ravenel Road on the other side of the river. Which way?
Okay. So I have to go in on Ravenel then. That's what I have to do.
Is that where they said? Because
yes.
I mean, you're on the opposite side of the river than the park office then.
Yeah, well, that's where we'll be meeting. I'm on the same side of the river as the park office. We're meeting up at the entry point on he said Ravenel.
All right, I just want to make sure.
What do you
Yeah.
mean?
No, I would have figured it out eventually.
No, okay, because I would have come in from the other side normally to look at it, because there's a road that goes down to the bridge, and the other is just like the parking trail kind of. But it's fine. You can see it
Right.
either way. You can see it either way.
Yeah, his email definitely said the Ravenel Road.
Okay.
So that's where I'll go.
Maybe I have to look at my schedule.
Yeah, don't kill yourself for it, because I don't know how long we're going to be, and I don't know what it is he has to tell me. I was totally gobsmacked that he replied to me so quickly. Oh, there's developments. We should do a site walk. I'm like, oh, okay. Site walk it is. Woo-hoo.
Okay. Well, if you don't see me, call me later or something. If it's,
Well, you know what I
all
will
right.
do? I'm going to email you my cell phone number as soon as we're off this. And then if you're coming, just text me in the morning.
All right. Okay.
Because I'll have my phone, and that'll be the only way I would be able to communicate with anybody anyway.
Kara, what's the meeting about?
The Blaine Road footbridge for West Thompson Dam across, what is that, the Orange Trail? Is that the?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Across the Orange Trail, has been, was removed in 2011, and then it was another one of the Yukon student projects, although this one, I guess, actually had engineering supervision.
Yes.
So there was a deal where, the town would do the design, and the Army Corps would actually install the bridge, and Senator Blumenthal came out in 2018, and they put it into a funding bill in Congress, because it's a federal property, so it had to go through Congress, not through the state. And then it just vanished. The whole thing vanished. And Ken raised it last week, I think. Maybe not just Ken. A couple of people have raised it recently, and I just was trying to get caught up today, so I emailed the contact that I found in some of Marianne's old records that Ken had forwarded to me, and the guy got back to me right away. So maybe something good is about to happen.
All right. Also, the Board of Finance and the Trails Committee put money into that design at Yukon. So the towns are already invested in this.
That's right. I saw that as well. There is investment. So yeah,
So, and then,
if we can
so
push it forward, we should.
Originally, what the Army Corps said was that they had like these, it's like a CCC, the Conservation Corps or something, people who would be doing training and at the site, and they would actually do the abutments and the bridge, build it, and then that never happened.
Yeah, so hopefully I'll get some really substantive update on that tomorrow. I'm fascinated to know what he's got to tell me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we can include information on it for people. Okay. I think that is it for this evening. Obviously, if anybody has anything else, feel free to
I'm just
send
going to look at
some
those action items at the end and maybe prioritize them differently. I don't like ending with all that bicycle stuff. I'm sorry, it's not a major issue for me. So
yeah, I understand.
It's secondary. I mean, it's like on the radar, but no, I agree. We have a lot of things that are a bigger priority.
Yeah.
And Karen, it looks like this is the last topic, or the trails was the last topic that I had you on a working group. So I would only see you again on the next full group meeting. But you said you couldn't do the one in November. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm going to be taking a Monday night class. So
okay.
I'm booked up until after the next December Trails meeting on Mondays.
What kind of class,
Okay.
Karen?
Ceramics.
Ooh,
I don't know
fun.
how we're gonna do it on Zoom, but it's an old teacher of mine. We're doing it on Zoom at the Worcester Craft Center.
Oh, cool.
So trying to get remotivated, get back to work.
Well, good night, everyone.
Okay, guys,
Good
it's
night.
8:30. Good work.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.